Top of the morning. It's DFS Stats and Facts with Ned Mack. Right back for week 12. We're continuing week 12. We saw the Thursday night game. Real quick, if you haven't already, please subscribe and follow that Instagram page at DFS underscore Stats and Facts. And we still here, man. Feeling really good about this week. Almost like every week. But this week is pretty big. A lot of crazy matchups. But before we even get into that, we're going to talk about these players, man. Stars in charge real quick. Can't believe I'm about to say some of these names, but Josh Allen, he played the Redskins last week, and he went off 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's what caught my eye. He is 6'4" this week. Don't know if I want to pick him this week, but he did pretty well for somebody last week. Dak Prescott, he was brought up last week in Stars in Charge, and he continued last week as well. He had 444 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he might even get lucky this week against New England. Not sure, though, because New England is ranked first against quarterbacks. And you already know how New England's defense is and what they've been doing this year. However, they're saying now Tom Brady is questionable. So the Cowboys might get lucky, but I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to keep it moving. Sam Darnold, man, 5,800 this week. He had 293 last week, 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Gave you 26.4 fantasy. Also, Dak Prescott, 34.6 fantasy. And Josh Allen, man, he just had a day. I think it was about 20-something fantasy as well. I talked about this guy on Bums to Stay Away From, Jeff Driscoll. But he actually had made out really well last week, and he's only 5'5" this week. He had 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown. And that gave 27.5. And that was at Dallas, which I was really surprised that Dallas let him do all that. But Detroit this week is ranked 17th against quarterbacks and 16th when it comes to passing yards against them. So he might have another decent week, but who knows. And last guy for my stars in charge, is Drew Brees, man. He did his thing. He answered my question correctly. He had 6,600, 228 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Carolina this week, another NFC South matchup, so I think he's going to eat again. Now for DFS value, I brung up Tariq Cohen a couple times. He was on Bum to Stay Away From him for a couple weeks because of Mitchell Trubisky, pretty much because they weren't using him correctly. But now Tariq Cohen, I did say that he was going to start getting love, and I think that that's going to continue. Tariq Cohen, he's at 4,600. 9 attempts last week, 39 yards, 5 receptions for 35 yards, and that touchdown, 18-4 fantasy. Look, New York Giants ranked 25th against passing yards a game and 23rd against rushing yards. Tariq Cohen can do both, right? They have the Giants this week. I think that's going to be a crazy game points-wise anyway because both teams really suck this year, and defenses haven't really been turning it up for them, especially for the Giants. But Chicago is pretty disappointing defense-wise, so we'll see what they do. This might be a turn-up game for them as well because Giants have been slipping, but they are coming off the bye, so we'll see what happens. My boy Balaj for Miami, he is going to be a starter because Walton now he actually got waived by the Dolphins. They got him up out of there in shorter terms, but yeah, Balaj last week he's 4,400. He had 9 attempts, 9 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 receptions with 8 yards. Gave you 12.7 fantasy. That's not bad, just for a little flex option, running back 2 if you will, but for Draftkings, you might want to throw him in there this week because he has Cleveland, who is 26th against rushing yards a game. Ridley, finally, for Atlanta, turned up. Another good value guy, DFS value. Only at 6,500, 8 receptions, 143 yards, and a touchdown. Gave you 31.3 fantasy. I think that's going to continue this week because they have Tampa Bay, who is dead last against wideouts and 31st in passing yards a game. And also you want to keep Julio in mind as well. He's only 8,000 as well if you want to go higher up. Now, bums to stay away from this week, it's easy. Jameis Winston, 6,200. Look, he gave you 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 4 interceptions. So, with those interceptions, he only gave you about 21.8 fantasy. That ain't going to work for me. And he's going against the new look Atlanta Falcons, who's ranked new look Atlanta Falcons defense, who's ranked 27th against passing yards a game and 19th against quarterbacks. So, again, he might throw a couple of touchdowns, but you know with those touchdowns comes interceptions. So I don't know about my boy Winston, man. I just wish he wouldn't throw so many interceptions because he would be a star in charge almost every week. The way he really can get it done and keeps up with the great teams. I saw how they battled out with Seattle. I think they beat the Rams this year. So crazier things would have happened if Jameis Winston wasn't throwing so many interceptions. But he is. Kyle Allen, he's at 5,200. Winston's at 6,200. But yeah, Kyle Allen's at 5,200, 325 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Probably should have mentioned him first, but he gave you 12.7 fantasy last week. It's terrible for quarterbacks. You know me. I need 20 or more, at least 20 or more, and that's on a bad day. Mitchell Trubisky, 5,100, 190, another bum to stay away from. 1 touchdown and an interception, only gave you 11 fantasy. That's terrible. I could have got more and did get more from Justin Tucker last week, and that's a field goal kicker. He gave me about 14, 15. If your field goal kickers get more than your quarterback, you really need to look for a new quarterback. For real. But yeah, Giants off the bye, 25th against passing yards a game and 24th against quarterback. So who knows, Mitchell Trubisky might have a decent game if he can get his act together. Fantasy defense wins championships too. I am hopping on the Atlanta Falcons defensive wave. They made some changes since the bye week. They have been balling. They're only at 3,500. They allowed 3 points last week with 4 interceptions, and they had 1 defensive touchdown. They gave you 26 fantasy. Look, coming off the bye of week 9, Atlanta has kept the Saints under 10 points and Carolina to only 3 points. They have Tampa Bay this week. Do you see the pattern? The pattern is this. NFC South matchups, they have been dominating since they got off this bye week. Somebody did their homework. They've been talking to each other like, yo, we can really do this, but we got to make some changes, and they have done that. So I think that continues this week, especially against Tampa Bay. No question. Behind them, I have Steelers defense at 4K. Now, before that crazy behind primetime game that they had with the Browns, the Steelers defense was headed in the right direction. Week 8, they had 13. Week 9, they had 19. And then week 10, they had 25. That's great numbers for defense. This week, they get Ryan Finley and the Bengals. So what do you think's going to happen? And at 3,500 and 3,700, I got both the Browns defense and the Bears defense. And I'll tell you why. Browns dropped 16 fantasy on the Steelers, allowing only 7 points, 4 interceptions, and 4 sacks. They play Miami this week, who is 31st in rushing yards and a game, and 32nd, which is dead last, in points allowed. So that should tell you something. Bears defense has had 2 interceptions and 1 defensive fumble recovery in the last 2 weeks. They could get lucky against a struggling Giants offense. Could get lucky. Could is the key word. Against a struggling Giants offense. However, keep in mind, Giants did come off a bye. You saw what Atlanta did off the bye. You see their record, right? So the Giants could play well. You never know. That's why I said could. Also, the Giants are ranked 27th against defenses and 28th with points allowed. But who knows? Maybe they made some changes too. Lord knows they need to. Elite sleeps. We got Randall Cobb. They're going against the Patriots this week. He is at 4,300. 4 receptions last week, 115 yards and 1 touchdown. Gave 24.5 on fantasy. Last 2 weeks he has had a touchdown and also was over 100 yards receiving. I also have my boy Renfro from the Raiders. Now, they play the Jets this week, so I really like their matchup, and that's why I think he's going to be a sleeper. He's been doing the damn thing the last couple weeks now. 4,500, 5 receptions and 66 yards last week, just missing that touchdown. 11.6 though. Obviously he's one of Carr's favorite targets next to Waller. His receptions and targets have been going up, and they play the Jets this week, who is ranked 29th against wide receivers. So I got him on there. Now check it. James Washington, 500, and Jalen Samuels at 7,200. I got both of them on there, along with Trey Edmonds, who's only 3,900. It's a lot going on for the Steelers right now. Why? Because Juju and Connor are, again, out on injuries. Juju, I don't think he's going to play at all, and Connor is not looking too good either. So Trey Edmonds was getting a lot of love last week. I think that continues, along with Jalen Samuels. And don't forget about Washington. People are really sleeping on Washington, but what's his name? The backup quarterback for the Steelers, he's been throwing to him a lot. So just keep those 3 in mind as well. Now, what we got? Running backs, running-ish. Look, Christian McCaffrey again, man. I got to keep bringing him up. I know his salary is really high, but look, 10,500. He gave you 14 attempts, 70 yards, 11 receptions, 121 yards, and no touchdowns, though. But even without the touchdowns, he still gave you 33.1 fantasy. His average was 30-something a week. Bro, that's crazy. Bull didn't even score, and they didn't even win either. So keep that in mind. Christian McCaffrey, running back, running ish. He's been doing it all season. Also, he joined the 99 overall club on Madden. So big ups to him for that. Well deserved. Derrick Henry last week. 6,900 this week, but last week he had 23 attempts, 188 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Gave you 36.1 fantasy. He's been doing a damn thing as well. Jacksonville this week, who was ranked 25th against running backs and 29th when giving up rushing yards a game. So yeah, Derrick Henry definitely should plug him in somewhere. Josh Jacobs, 7,400, 23 attempts, 112 yards, 0 touchdowns. Also another running back that was running ish last week, even without the touchdown. 17.4. That's great for fantasy. Only 2 weeks this year without double digits for him, fantasy week wise. And he had a good matchup on paper. Well, he has a good matchup on paper this week. Jets are 9th against running backs. So some would say that's tough. Jets have been playing some pretty good run defense, but Josh Jacobs has just been good, period. So I don't know, man. I think he's still going to have a pretty decent game, but who knows. Also, I have on here Mark Ingram, who is only 6,300, 13 attempts, 48 yards, but he really got it done last week off of 3 receptions, 37 yards, and getting 2 touchdowns receiving. They have the Rams this week, 11th against running backs and 5th for allowing rushing yards. So that should be a nice game for them. But the Ravens have really been looking pretty damn unstoppable week after week. So I don't think that's going to matter either because the Rams been pretty suspect. However, that defense change that they got when they had Ramsey, they went off that week. Next week, they only gave you about 11. So we'll see what happens this week. But yeah, man, Ingram's Ravens, period, honestly. You see, I even mentioned Lamar. If you don't know about Lamar at this point and don't know what he's doing, you got a problem or you're just really not paying attention. But yeah, the Ravens, they doing it. They doing it. Also, I put on Mixon from Cincinnati. And I put him on last week, too, and say, hey, man, don't forget about Mixon. And he's doing it again. So 5,900 this week. 15 attempts, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Last 2 weeks, he has averaged 18.7 fantasy, so you might want to keep that in mind. Tough game this week, though, against the Steelers defense, who's ranked 5th against running backs. So we'll see if the Mixon train continues rolling. However, that is a nice little rivalry game, or has become a rivalry game over the years because of the whole playoff games, and you already know about all that. But we'll see what's up. With that, I'll definitely be keeping my eye on Mixon this week. Wide receivers wildin'. We had a bunch last week, but these are the ones that I picked. First was John Brown. He had 6,700, 9 receptions, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He is at Denver this week. Then you have my boy Michael Thomas. Higher up, 9,300 this week, 8 receptions, 114 yards last week, and a touchdown. They're at Carolina this week. Then you have my boy DJ Shark with the return of Nick Foles, 6,400, 8 receptions, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They're at Tennessee this week. Michael Gallup, 5,900, 9 receptions, 148 yards, 0 touchdowns, but 148 yards, damn near crazy, especially for Michael Gallup. Not Amari Cooper, but Michael Gallup, and I definitely brought him up a couple times this year, but at New England this week. 37.7 for John Brown, 28.4 for Michael Thomas, 33.4 for DJ Shark, 26.8 for Michael Gallup, and then you got my boy Parker for Miami. He had 5,200 this week, 7 receptions, 135 yards. Also did not score, but they got Cleveland this week, so he probably could score this week at 23.5. He gave you last week. Now, another segment that we had to throw in here. We tried it out a couple weeks ago, but tight ends on the turn up. Got my boy Ryan Griffin, who went off for the Jets. He's at 4,200. He only had 11.3 fantasy, but man, he had 5 receptions, 109 yards, and 1 touchdown. That is a tight end, folks. And they are at Oakland this week. You also have Jacob Hollister, 4,300. Week 9, he had 19.7 against Tampa Bay. Week 10, he had 20.2 fantasy against San Fran. That was just last week, or now 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. So, yeah. Hollister this week, ain't no telling what he's going to do. But he is a good pickup if you really need a tight end like that. Then you got my boy Dwelly for, I don't even know if that's how you say his name, for San Fran. But please keep in mind, Kittle was doubtful. He has been upgraded to questionable, so you might want to keep a lookout on that between today, which is Saturday, and Sunday, early Sunday before the game starts. Definitely keep in mind on Kittle because you don't want to have a zero throwing Dwelly in there. However, 3,700 this week. I'll still throw his numbers out there. Last week he had 4 receptions, 14 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and gave you 17.4. My boy Waller, who I mentioned earlier, with Renfro, he had 5,700 for Waller. That's how much he costs. 5 receptions, 78 yards, and gave you 12.6. My other boy, Mark Andrews, again for the Ravens, 6,100, 4 receptions, 75 yards, and a touchdown last week, gave you 17.5. Zach Ertz and Goddard. Zach Ertz for 6,000. Goddard, 3,700. You already know what team they play for. 9 receptions and 94 yards for Ertz, and 3 receptions, 36 yards, and a touchdown for Goddard. You definitely want to keep Goddard in mind because he be getting those sneaky, crazy touchdowns on the low, and he's only 3,700. Zach Ertz, that was probably one of his best games this year. I'm going to keep it funky. Another sneaky pick, though, Cameron Brate, 3,600. 10 receptions, 73 yards last week. The most out of all the tight ends that are on the Tampa Bay. I still can't believe how they're doing O.J. Howard. I think he only has like 1 or 2 touchdowns this year. I honestly think it's 1. But yeah, Tampa Bay has Atlanta this week, who is 27th on giving up passing yards. So keep Cameron Brate in mind. Very sneaky, 3,600. Yeah, he might be back on his stuff. Rookies on the rise. I only have 1 this week. And he's been on here a couple times, but not on rookies on the rise, though. Darius Slayton, 5,300. Week 10, he gave you 10 receptions, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I say week 10 because they had a bye last week, the Giants. They are at Chicago this week, as I stated earlier. So, yeah, Slayton, that's all I really got for rookies on the rise. But badass kickers, I got a bunch. That's why I only had 1 for rookies on the rise. Bullock was missing last week for Cincinnati. Kicker Ficken, he was missing. Fairbairn for Houston was wildin'. Atlanta's kicker Koo, or Co, however you say his name, he was missing. Josh Lambo missed. McManus missed. Hopkins, Washington's kicker, and they really needed it. He missed. Zane Gonzalez leads the league in field goals with the fewest missed field goals. So that's a badass kicker on the good side. And also another field goal stat and note, which is really crazy. I thought it was crazy, so I had to write it down. Most missed field goals this year through week 10 in 25 years. So that shows you why I put badass kickers on here, because I knew kickers were really missing at a crazy rate. And with that stat, I was like, yo, it was a good idea because y'all out here really wilding. But, hold on. Yo, am I flying like that? I think I am. Oh, yeah. Bye week backstabbers. You got Arizona Cardinals. They ain't playing. Chiefs ain't playing. Chargers ain't playing. Vikings ain't playing. I will be doing my picks later on Instagram with the helmets. So stay tuned for that. Instagram on Instagram story on DFS_Stats&Facts. Quarterback question I have is for Sam Darnold. And you know what? I think it's just for Sam Darnold, yeah. Does Sam Darnold keep this going, or did he get blessed last week against, who did they play? The Redskins. So, honestly, I got a feeling that he might keep it going. But I can't go all in on Sam Darnold because this is the same quarterback that was out on mono and really left his team hanging when they needed him, which was earlier in the year. So now the Jets trying to play comeback football, but their record is already garbage, I feel like. So, yeah, that's the only really quarterback question I have is he going to turn up? But also, I could even ask Jeff Driscoll if he's going to have a pretty decent week like he had last week. Because I'm going to be honest, I had him on bums to stay away from. He shut my ass right on up. Because he had 27.5 last week. And I thought that was really amazing, man. But shout out to the First Lady. of DFS Stats and Facts with the banners. You already know we're going to be using those. That's one of them. But yeah, man, I really appreciate all the love that's coming through with this. I know it's been a long time coming for myself, man. But with this fantasy stuff, it's really fun. I'm keeping it up. Also want to note that we will be keeping it going with the NBA. However, I will keep saying this, that we have to continue where we started and finish off NFL. And once NFL starts dying down, I'll jump right into NBA because I'm good over there too. And hook y'all up with that, man, because there's a lot going on in the NBA right now. And I wish that I already had millions of stuff already because I would just be doing this full time. But, man, thank you for the support, man. We really appreciate y'all. It's Ned Mac for DFS Stats and Facts, and I'm going to see y'all. Good luck tomorrow.